Julia Coronado is chief economist of North America at investment bank BNP Paribas. She's also a former Fed economist. She joins us from her office here in New York, continuing our discussion about that S&P downgrade of America's debt. Julia, welcome back to Bottom Line. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Julia, back in the spring, S&P did send up, as I mentioned to Maya McGinnis, that warning flare about America's credit rating. Even so, were you surprised by the downgrade? And how big a warning is this to lawmakers?
We actually were not surprised. After reading the S&P documents that they've been putting out over the last few weeks, I fully anticipated that given the fiscal package we got, which didn't get anywhere close to what they were looking for, that a downgrade was imminent. So I wasn't surprised, but certainly it has been yet another blow for markets to absorb.
Well, today was the first chance for global investors, for the markets to respond to that downgrade of American debt. The markets have been sharply lower last week and this week, and last week the Dow Industrials fell almost 700 points. What's the psychological effect of the downgrade on the markets? Are we going to see a sustained rise in bearish sentiment between now and the end of the year, or is this a short-term thing?
Well, I think it is more fundamental. And what was going on last week and the week before was that ourselves and a lot of other forecasters were downgrading our forecasts for the U.S. economy based on incoming data. And it's not just a U.S. phenomenon, it's also global. So global forecasts are getting marked down. And there's a sense that we're in a slower economy than we thought before, and policymakers are sort of out of ammunition to fight that malaise. So I think there's a real repricing of the outlook going on, and S&P just sort of reminded us how structural these problems are.
And speaking of structural problems, we should mention to our audience that right now at this hour, 2:18 here in the East Coast, New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 514 points. Earlier today on Bloomberg Television, Mohammed Al-Arian of PIMCO discussed the timing of the S&P downgrade. Let's listen in, and I'd like to get your thoughts.
It comes at a fragile time for the economy, and it's not a surprise that most analysts are busily revising down their growth estimates, and there's been so much talk over the weekend of recession even. So this is not a good situation, and we've got to remember how fragile the economy is.
Julia, how fragile is this economy?
I think it's very fragile. I mean, I'd say odds of a recession at this point are about 50-50. So what I'd like to see, we had a statement from the G7 this morning that really didn't say much. I think we need a more coordinated action from the G7, maybe more quantitative easing from the central banks, something to put a floor under these financial markets as we work through these structural problems.
Well, the structural problems, as you just intimated, are cascading across Europe as well. Julia, in our last minute, the actions that were taken by the ECB in Europe, how is that going to affect the landscape? And will there be some sort of domino effect here in the United States, or are we already seeing that?
I think we are already starting to see that. I think what the ECB did was helpful to engage in the bond buying of Italy and Spain is certainly constructive, and it helps limit the dynamic that was developing. But again, it doesn't solve the underlying problem. So they've got their work cut out for them, and certainly our policymakers have their work cut out for them. And it's, it'd be nice to see some concrete solutions and longer-term thinking rather than just fighting fire after fire.
Julia Coronado, chief economist, North America, BNP Paribas, joining us this afternoon. Julia, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.